Hello, and today I have decided to show you one game from my youth, which was played in 1994. Here I was playing white, and I was facing one of the experienced international masters in Bulgaria, Ognan Todorov. This game was played in Bulgaria in one open, so you won't find it in the database. Now, after e4, black went e6. This was the main opening of my opponent, and here at that time I was playing all the time the advanced French. So after e5, as you know, here black has various ideas like b6, but c5 is clearly the most popular line. Then white goes c3, knight to c6, knight to f3, and this is by the way one of the probably most important type of positions in the game, because you can achieve such a pawn chains, let's say, not only from French defense but from various openings. Sometimes with different move order you can arrive to similar positions, so it's very important to know what is the plan for white and for black. And here clearly maybe you know that black has problems with his bishop on c8, and this is the only problem he has. More or less everything else is good. This knight usually goes via e7 to f5, the bishop could go to e7, and then he wants to castle. From white's point of view, you have to protect first of all the pawn on d4, which could be under attack, and then to bring the bishop on d3, where he will be hoping to attack on h7 and try to create attack. So a3 is one of the main moves, and then you can play b4 in many occasions. There is such a plan. Now it's black to move. He played bishop d7, queen b6 is the other main move, and now I went a3. Also you can play bishop e2 immediately, or bishop to d3, but this is a different system. Now black plays f6. As well he can play rook c8, queen b6, knight e7. This is not such a popular line, and I remember at the time I was not so sure what to do against this line, but I didn't want it to take on f6, because when you take, you help actually black to develop his knight on f6. Then he has, let's say, again another good square for his bishop to go to d6. And okay, you can play this line of course with white, but I felt that black has a good game. Then if you don't want to take, it means that you have to leave black to take on e5, and you can have a weak pawn on e5 in some occasions. But I think bishop d3 is the best move here for white. And now queen to c7. So this is a bit different from the typical queen b6 ideas, but queen b6 actually now is not working along with the f6, because even if you put the queen to b6, let's say, and somehow you manage to take on d4, take with the knight, take with the queen, it will be bishop g6 check in the end. So the idea of this line is for black to put pressure on e5 and to force white to take on f6 and to achieve the same thing. Knight takes and then bishop d6 and castle. But I thought, okay, maybe I can still hold the pawn without taking on f6, so I have castled. And now, if black don't take, I want to play rook e1 and defend my pawn. So he takes. Now, if you take with the pawn, this is of course a theoretical line. Here black can even take the pawn. I think this line exists. And you cannot play bishop to f4. Okay, you can play, but after bishop d6, so knight f3 check, and then queen b6, black is a pawn up. White has some compensation. But he took, when he took with the pawn, my calculation, because at the time I didn't know the line, my calculation was very good. I found knight e5, and in French defense, in general, you want to put a knight or some piece on e5. You don't want to take with the pawn, because then if you take with the pawn, this will close the e file, and you will lose this potentially very good outpost e5. So now he has to take. And of course here I can take, and then to play rook e1, sacrifice a pawn if needed. But my idea was to play bishop to f4 now, because now I thought, yes, knight f3 is not possible, queen f3, and you protect the bishop. So I want to take the piece back and to have a very strong bishop on e5. Also, now I was thinking like this. Okay, it's his move. This is not working. So if knight f6, then I can even take with the pawn. And then if he moves the knight where? Actually, he has to go back to g8. And then queen h5 check. The same is if he plays bishop to d6, I can take with the pawn. Now he cannot take here because queen h5 check, he's losing the bishop. So he has to play something else. And it was difficult also for him to find something because white idea is very actually clear now. Bishop takes e5, attacking the queen, and then queen h5 check. And so it seems like white is almost winning. So he has played the move castle. And then I took with the bishop. And I was happy that bishop d6 is not possible because you can take on g7 and you're winning exchange. So he has to move the queen to b6. And here, okay, the game seems to be close to equal, but I think white has advantage because his bishop on e5 is very strong. And because of the pawn structure, black has this weakness on e6. So I was wondering between b4 or maybe knight d2 or maybe some other moves. I start to calculate now, can I play knight d2 and to sacrifice all those pawns? But in the end, I have thought, okay, why not to take on c5? Because if I take, his bishop has to remain there to defend g7. So he has to take either the c5 or b2. But if he takes to b2, I will go knight d2. Then the bishop is defending the c3 pawn, and the queen is in big danger on the b file. That's why he took on c5. And now I think the most simple move was, of course, knight d2, and then knight b3 or knight f3, rook e1, and white has clear advantage. But from here, and incredibly, I started to calculate a very long line, which was quite unclear, and it was difficult to calculate everything until the end. Probably nowadays I will play without thinking knight d2, but I wanted to see what is going on in the line bishop to d4. Bishop d4 is attacking the queen, and it's attacking the pawn, and I thought maybe I can take the pawn, because if he goes queen a5, clearly I have b4. So if bishop d4, maybe queen c7 or queen d6. But if queen c7, I can take the pawn, and then if b6, it will be bishop a6, almost checkmate because the queen is there. So I thought, okay, queen c7 is maybe not good. But if he goes queen d6, and I take the pawn, and he plays b6, and I give this check, and the king c7, and then he wants to move the rook to a8 to attack both bishops, and I start to calculate, okay, can I maybe somehow defend the bishops, or to do something with the queen, with the knight to go, with the pawns. And for a long time, somehow this was in my brain that I want to go bishop d4 and attack this pawn. And in the end, I did this move, bishop d4, queen d6. But here, I was not sure what to do, or maybe I figured out that this line is not entirely clear, because now I don't know what white can do, but clearly it's very risky for white to put his bishops there. So I thought, okay, I go knight d2, and I'm very proud of my calculation, because from here, when I went knight d2, I think I saw what later happened in the game until the end. Of course, here black can play many moves, like king b8 or knight f6 or b6, but For example, if he plays king to b8, after knight f3, I want to move the bishop to e5, so he has to either move the queen back to c7 or to move the king, and then you can simply play bishop e5 or knight e5 or knight g5 or rook e1, and then clearly white has a big advantage. Of course, the game could be played for a long time. It's not the end of the world for black, but still he's clearly worse. And if he plays knight f6, this is the same. My idea was like this, knight f3. So the only move which I was calculating was e5. Of course, this is the most principled reaction, e5. And now what? And it turns out that now bishop a7 is indeed working. And it's not so difficult maybe to calculate if you have studied a lot of tactical puzzles. But for people who don't know too many tactical patterns, maybe it will be interesting to find out what is going on now. Bishop a7. And here probably black should have just leave this pawn and play something like knight f6, bishop c6, bishop e7, try to develop his pieces. But clearly when you when you have sacrificed the a pawn and there is a bishop over there, you want to play b6 naturally to close the bishop. This is maybe the best practical chance. And here, I don't know if bishop a6 was good. I think now white in trouble because rook 8 is coming once again, and it's not clear now can you defend the bishop. But my idea was not to defend the bishop at all. This is when I went 92, and here I played the move a4. This was the main line which I was calculating when I decided to play for this pawn. And now my plan is very simple. I want to go a5. So if he plays some developing move like knight f6, in this case white is clearly winning. If you move the b pawn, I can just play bishop b6. So he has to play the king to b7. And now already it's clear that white is losing the bishop. So what was my idea? Why did I play all these bishop d4, knight d2 moves and bishop a7? Because I saw the move a5. And now, okay, once again, if you take on a5, I take with the rook and protect the bishop, then I go queen a1. In case of b5, I simply can go bishop to e3. So you have to take the bishop. What else? But after pawn takes, double check. Now black cannot take on b6 because if rook a6 he's losing the queen. So he has to move to either b7, either b8. In the game he went to king to b8. In case of king b7, my plan was to play rook a7, check. So he will be forced to go to b8 once again. So better for black is to go to b8. And maybe when my opponent was calculating this line 5 moves ago, he has reached this position and he thought, okay, now I have an extra piece, there is no check, the b6 pawn is hanging, so maybe I can just survive somehow. But when I played this bishop d4 move, this was already in my mind that I can sacrifice the bishop like this to open the a file. And from here, of course, when you have the pawn on b6 and open a file, I think most of you can see very easily the next move, which was rook a8. And this was the last move in the game. Here my opponent has resigned because if he takes, now queen a1 check. And it's not important if king to b8 or king b7. I think king b7 is the best move. And now you have two possibilities, queen a7 check, which is not so clear because then king to c6. Much more simple is queen a6, because if king b8 there is queen a7 and bishop a6 mate. And if king c6, already the queen is on a6, not on a7. And you can play bishop b5, checkmate. So this is one very nice game, which I was very proud of at the time, because like I said, my opponent was very good EM, and it's always nice to sacrifice pieces and deliver checkmate. I hope that you have enjoyed this game, and see you next time.